Hello everyone from the Novedge team. Welcome to today's webinar, Complex 3D Painting for 3ds Max. Sai, CTO from SiNi Software, will introduce the latest plugin, Disperse, for 3ds Max. Disperse is a freehand 3D painting tool and object replacer that will free up your artistic creativity to allow you to paint complex scenes as easy as digitally painting in a 2D software program. And you will see what I'm talking about very soon. And let me introduce you to Simon. Simon Donaghy is a co-founder and CTO of SiNi Software. He has over 20 years software programming experience for computer games, television, visual effects, visualization, and film. Simon, as I said, is a SiNi Software co-founder together with Nigel Hunt. Therefore, SiNi. And as I was saying, Disperse is a plugin. It's included in all access software that you can find on our website. Here's our product page for all access. There it is. And just go to novedge.com and you can find it very easily. Novedge is one of the largest online stores for design software, and we offer a huge assortment of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's needs. And for more daily software news and limited time promotions, pay a visit to the Novedge blog and follow us on the usual suspects, Facebook, Google+, and Twitter. Coming up next week, V-Ray for 3.6 for Rhino, real fast power. And I want to remind everyone that today's episode is going to be recorded and is going to be posted on our Vimeo and YouTube channel later on today. And now let me share Simon's screen and get this show on the road. Take it away, Simon.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Today we're going to talk about our main new release plugin, which is our Disperse. Disperse came about as a new replacement for the painting tool in 3D Studio Max. So it was always problematic painting stuff in your scene in Max. It was too heavy. We needed a way that you could actually paint something and it would turn into one mesh, sort of similar to a scatterer. So, and I'm going to give you an example with that. We're going to just do, this is our basic scene to just sort of show what it does. And then we're going to go into two practical scenes and we'll actually do two little projects. So our Disperse tool can be found underneath the creation control panel down by SiNi Software. You'll see Disperse. And in the Disperse interface, you're under distributed objects. You're simply just going to add the objects that you'd like to paint or swap out. So right now we're going to select and we'll grab these trees first and we'll use those as an example. What I have in my scene here is a whole bunch of CAD symbols that we took and exploded into different objects. And as you can see up in here, that none of them are instances. So Disperse will go and find stuff that's similar in its replacing method. So we have down in our Painters tab, we have basically paint as a single object, paint multiple, or erase. Now we also have this last button, which is a replace object. So if you have something selected in your scene, you'll see it'll enable. And now I can simply press that button and select a symbol that I want to replace, and it'll replace those objects in the scene. Same thing with going down, selecting a bush, can select another symbol, or the second bush and select the third. So it's as simple as that to replace objects in the scene without painting them. With that done, you can go ahead and now go in and set up transformations. So I can say turn on random transformations. I can give them rotations. I can scale them down and sort of give that random that you'd get with trees themselves. I'm going to turn that back off though, because I'm going to paint cars and people and different stuff. You can do these as individual transformations as well. So, if I just wanted to have the trees scaled and I'm going to paint some people afterwards, it's not going to affect those. So let's take a look at our painting in Disperse as it is. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some people in here. So I'm going to go up to my pick objects and go through it. I'm just going to grab some people. And now that I've got those in, I'm just going to go select people here. Actually, a good thing to know is if you have nothing selected, Disperse is going to paint everything. If you have certain things selected, it'll just paint what you have selected. So I'm going to turn down my collisions, and I can go turn up people themselves, the amount of painting. And now if I paint this in here, I'm going to have paint people, and as soon as I'm done my brush stroke, it's going to add those to the single mesh. Now if I turn up collisions, you'll see as I start to keep painting on here, they're never going to paint on top of themselves. So your collisions are aware as you're painting scenes, so you don't end up with people on top of each other. We also have our directional painting. So if I wanted to paint people and just paint them in a line down here, they're going to go in the exact direction that we pulled them into the mesh, which is essentially, if we look at this in our top view, if we look at this in our top view, I have all our cars painting north and all our people painting north. It doesn't care that, say you have transformations, you've taken a car and rotated it north. It doesn't care what the original transformations are. It just, whatever direction you actually add these in as an object, they're going to paint in that area. So if I say I'm going to paint people going in that direction, it's going to know that I brought them in with them pointing north. All right, so also with our painting tool, we have the ability to erase very easily. We can do that by selective erasing. So I can just erase the person that I have selected. So let's just go select 2 here. Now I can slowly erase those. The other part of Disperse is I can go and simply replace something. So if I was to go in here to the object where I've added the objects, distributed objects, I can say, well, that one tree, I want to replace that with, say, this car. And it's going to go replace everything that I painted in the scene itself. So with our demo scene, as we start to go over, and we'll open up another scene here, and we'll start to paint some objects as well. Just the last thing is display modes. You can display things in, say, original object or into, say, point cloud, or it's going to be a little slow with the screen recording. We have point cloud, bounding box, a lot of different stuff. But if you're doing big scenes, pyramid's probably going to be your most efficient to paint in. You can actually display individual objects as well. So if I select maybe one of the people that I have in here, it's just displaying that person in a mesh itself. So I can go to the original object on that. It'll be a little lighter to see what's going on. Let me just put this to all objects and go back to the point cloud. So we have 2 scenes to show you. I'm going to go paint up sort of a city scene. Actually, let me just put this in pyramid at the moment. We have a city scene that we're going to paint up, and also a sort of outdoors type thing. And we'll do a lot of different, we'll add in the color correction, and I'll show you memory-wise the efficiency of this. All right, so let's go open up. I'm going to open up our large harbor scene first. And the way we created this tool is we had a lot of scenes that we had to add people and cars and certain things too. So we needed something that was different than a scatter. And we do have our own scatter tool as well, which is out for beta right now, which I'll probably touch on at the very end. But we needed something like this, where you could actually paint objects within a scene, even though there were multiple different pieces of geometry, sort of complex surfaces, which wasn't ideal to use for a scattering tool itself. The only thing I'm going to do in this scene right now is I'm going to take this little piece of glass and hide it. We can back out to the scatter. And we're going to create ourselves a disperse. All right, so first thing in the disperse, of course, we'll need to do the same thing. We're going to need to add some people to it. So I'm just going to start loading up all the people. I can do it this way in the pick mode, or I can actually open up the add by name dialog. But just for this, it's a little easier to just go through and pick what I'm adding to our dialog itself. Now, once I've got our people selected, and since I want to paint everybody here, I don't really need to have anything selected. I'm just, whatever I paint is going to go right into a single mesh. I don't really have trees or anything, so I don't really need to be selective with what I'm painting. But what I am going to do is I'm going to put this into original mode. Because as I'm painting these people, I'm going to sort of really need to see what people I'm painting, where I'm painting them. So as I'm going to sort of add these to all the different levels here, I'm probably going to want to see which, obviously what direction they're going in, what they are, so I don't end up with, people sitting, some random people sitting on the steps like this. I have some sitting people on here. I don't want them sitting on the steps, so I'll probably need to see, what's going on. Now, also with this painting brush, I can also go to paint multiple people, and I'm just going to change the size of this around and give myself a little larger of a paintbrush. And if I just go and paint a whole, some people in there, you can actually see as I've painted them, they're going to go onto their right surface. So it decides on where it's going to put people and knows to transfer. It uses I guess a collision array down effect. So if I was to paint multiple people, it's going to look at the surface that it's going to paint on. Now, I have one person here that's probably a little too close to the edge, so I'm going to get rid of that person. But the painting effect of like multiple people, I can easily just go and place them, and they're going to be on the right sort of height and area that they need to be. People all standing on the steps, even though these are multiple objects, it's very easy to go ahead and just start placing people around in my scene. So ideally, it gives us a good way of distributing objects, which is we never had before. Also, when it comes to the erasing, I also have a probability of erasing. So if I do, say, paint a good amount of people in here and I want to go erase those, I can turn down my probability brush to, say, maybe 13%. And as I'm going to erase, it's going to be similar to the fall off in Photoshop, that I'm not doing a complete erase stroke. I can actually partially erase or cull out some of the people that I have in my erase stroke. All right, so as you're sort of seeing, it's a nice, easy way to sort of go and populate your scene. You can have multiple disperses in your scene. You're not restricted to one, so I can go ahead and throw in something else. Also, when I'm doing now these are people, so I don't necessarily need to go in and make a lot of transformations to them. I could do possibly a scale effect. I could scale these down as a random scale, but I wouldn't want to do sort of a rotation on these, because I already know that some are walking up the steps and I have them sort of going in the right direction. So depending on what you're working with, you might want to, if you're doing trees, yes, you'd want to do rotations and stuff like that. But when you're doing people, you don't really want to randomly scale those, because you want to see sort of as you're laying in your scene what you're painting. Let's jump on to the next scene. Our next scene is our main painting scene. So I'm going to just open that up a little bit, which is also a scene that you can download from our website. I'll show you that at the very end. So this is our dispersed painting scene. And to start off, I'm just going to hit render here real quick and let it render just a quick little pass of what's going on, just so I can sort of show you once we add some stuff into here, sort of memory-wise of what we have going on. We won't render full scenes because we're live, but you'll be able to see essentially as we're running along what sort of memory uses we have once we have Disperse in here. So we can sort of see right now it's about 10 gig to render this empty scene. So I'm just going to go close this down. We're going to pick some objects in here, and I'll just slide this aside. So once we get really populated in here, we can sort of see the effects of the rendering in V-Ray. All right, so to paint up our scene, again, we'll create a Disperse. And in our Disperse, I'm going to sort of add all the different objects that we have. So we have some ivy, we have some grass, some clover, some weeds, lily pads, some lily pad flowers, let's see, some reeds, and then, of course, some weeds. So we'll just throw all these in on the end. And from that part, we should be able to just go into our perspective window and just start to paint some stuff up in here. I'm going to stay in pyramid mode for this because it's going to get, we're going to have quite a lot of stuff going on. So first off, I'm going to grab I'm going to paint our grass and clover. So we're going to go set up a little bit of a bigger brush here and make sure that we get a good amount of painting, and that should be good. So I'm going to start to paint up all this scene here. Actually, it can even go a little larger than this. And some more objects, and turn down our collisions just a little bit. Okay, so as you can see, as I'm starting to throw these in, like a scatter, as soon as I'm done my brush, it throws these right into the full mesh. So it makes it very light. Unlike the other painter, if I was to try and do this in the Max Painter in the very beginning, we would have grinded right to a halt in the very beginning, which makes the Max Painter just not very useful on massively large scenes. And as you can see, I have collisions on here, so I can just keep repainting and repainting over everything, and I'm not going to get too many objects. Now, I have scattered up the wall a little bit, which is fine. We can go ahead and we'll erase some of that stuff. But I just want to sort of get a good portion of grass in here, and clover. All right, so we've got that in. Now I can go ahead and start to sort of cull off some of the stuff that I had on the wall, because we don't want any of that stuff on the wall. And now I can go ahead and make my brush quite a bit smaller. Let me just spin this down. And I can fill in these last little bits that I had all over the place and clean this up. Now, I'm going to want probably a variation of this clover. So I do want a lot of grass, but I want a variation like clover. But I also want to make sure that I get a good variation out of this as well. So I'm going to go in here right off the bat. I'm going to turn on random transformations. I'm going to make sure that I get a good rotation out of this and a little bit of scale. But I do want to make sure that when I go in here, because I can do multiple transformations on this, I'm going to up my grass just a little bit more than my clover. And now that I've got this sort of painted off evenly, I'm going to select the clover itself, and I'm going to do some selective erasing. Because as much as I want my grass all over the place, I want it to be a little more random, like I had a pattern. So now that I've got rid of that clover, I can sort of paint this in with a little grass just where my collisions are. So it's going to figure out the empty areas that I've removed clover from and nicely fill that in without getting too heavy. And we can see we've got now pretty much the coverage that we want. Last thing I'm probably going to want to do in that area is I'm going to want a good amount of weeds. So I'm going to go probably throw in some random weeds around, just easily enough. And it's sort of now at a point where I've turned sort of my prospect of building a scene like this from being a scatter to more of a painting tool. Which is sort of a little bit of a different mindset. So whether I go through and I'm throwing wild flowers around. I can sort of more play with this easily enough where my selective erasing and painting or whatever I need makes it easy enough. So if I was to just go hit render here, you're going to see that even though it's got, you know, a good amount of grass and a good amount of weeds already sort of here in the background, it's not moving in memory whatsoever. So just keep that in mind, that the V-Ray optimization and everything that we've done to this is very, very good, the stuff that V-Ray has added to it for us. We worked with them for quite a while with how they used to manage their instances and a lot of how their SDK worked, so we could integrate that into our tools. Corona and the other renderers will be coming very soon. We're working with them now, but as of V-Ray, it's quite good for memory-wise. It does the exact same thing, so you don't really need to make V-Ray proxies and throw them into this tool. It already does that. It already manages the meshes just like a V-Ray proxy. And we'll talk about adding these to proxies at the very end as well. All right, so let's continue on. We have some reeds that we want to paint, so let's just grab some of these reeds, and we can actually go throw these in the front and maybe a little bit on this side with the water. And then we have lily pads. So I'm probably going to individually paint these lily pads, just throw a couple of them around here, just so I have something sort of nice in the scene. And then I also have lily pad flowers. So I can go throw these on top and sort of throw in, just give myself a little bit of a variation and stuff. And then we also have, let's see, what do we have? We have reed weeds, so we can throw those underneath. It's just going to give me a little bit of the smaller, dense stuff, so this gets a little fuller at render time. And then let's see, what else do we have? We have clover. Nope, we did clover, so probably ivy. Well, we can throw ivy on our back wall because we have all sorts of green stuff here, so we can go paint on top of these stones. We can throw all sorts of ivy around. And sort of, it's one of those that you can sort of play around with. It's so easy to change. I mean, if I want to go in here and say, all right, well, I'm not really liking a lot of this, I can just go in here and say, okay, well, I want to just erase this chunk and start from fresh. So I'm going to undo that because we'll actually want to have that back in there. Oops, that opened up my render. Sorry about that. Went to expert mode. So yeah, I mean, you have a lot of flexibility, and you can see right now we have object count. We already have 10,000 objects. We have 43 million polys, and you know, even if I take right now and let's just do a quick, it already knows that those objects are in there. It goes right away rendering, building the light cache, and you can still, there is a tiny bump in memory, but almost nothing. So memory-wise, it's quite good. And we're going to improve this. We're going to get even better with this and make some more changes. The other things that we have in here. So let's sort of take a look now that we've sort of done a scene here. We can look at some of the things that we can do. We do have a hidden dialog in here, which we're going to probably add a button to. But if you were to go, oh, sorry, in the distributed objects, if you were to go and double click on one of these, it opens up our renaming and proxy dialog. So anything in here that I don't want as a scene object, so let's go, just go, I'm going to back up, I'm going to go into, close this up, I'll go into perspective mode. Oops. Get out of here, and we'll go up to one of our objects, and we'll say, let's take the clover. We're going to get rid of the clover. So if I select this and I go to clover and double click on that, oops, sorry, down here, double click on clover, and I say I want to convert this into a proxy. So it'll ask me where I'm going to put it, and I'll just save this to my desktop at the moment. Hit save and OK. And you're going to notice, oops, with clover, sorry, you're going to notice with clover, it's put a little P next to it. That means that now that object is proxied, and I can take that and delete that out of my scene. And it doesn't affect that. So I could go through with all my scene objects, make those all the proxies, and now it is a built-in object inside Disperse. So if I was to click on the clover and wanted to paint it, it's still there. It's still inside, but now it's an internal proxy. So that's what I was saying about not having to create, say, SiNi proxies or V-Ray proxies before you throw them into here. They'll be more efficient rendering as a mesh, and if you need to make them into proxies to have them, to get them as a light scene object, you can actually just get rid of them as a mesh themselves. Let's see, the other thing, anytime, all the objects, of course, have their own textures on them. You don't throw the texture on Disperse itself. You keep the textures on the reference objects themselves. Once they've been created into a proxy, they will hold their own textures, so you won't have to worry about losing that texture at all. So if I wanted to come in here and say, hey, I want to export this back out to a mesh, it's going to bring the object back in, and it's going to put the texture back onto it. So the textures are also all held in here. The other thing, color variation. So we have this in, if you're used to using any of our other products, you're going to notice this same dialog here, which is our color variation and hue shift. So let's turn that on, and I'm going to give this a good amount of hue, and we'll just do a quick render of this. And what this is going to do is it's going to go through and create, as this first object renders here, it's going to go create some fresh new materials for these and give it a color variation themselves. Now, the first time we run this, it's going to build up, it's going to take a little while because it's going to need to go in and create all these texture variations out of this. We are changing this up. We don't have the same sort of speed out of this that we do with the V-Ray stuff as in rendering themselves right away. Once they have to go make these color variations, it does take a little longer to go through and render time. I think I've lost my V-Ray dialog though. We might have actually crashed this. Sorry about that, guys. It happens in a live demo. I'm going to go close this up real quick. I'll open up Max again. Sorry about that. It happens. Sorry. The color variation itself shouldn't be that slow. We've just integrated this in and released this as our new version. So we're sort of going through a couple of little teething pains, but I've never seen this. So of course it's going to happen on a live presentation. So let me just open up that file again and go through the dispersed scene. I'm going to go through, create another disperse really quick, and we'll go through, try that color variation again. Sorry about that. All right, so let's just grab some clovers, lily pads, and we'll go paint these around the scene. And we'll just do a quick render again out of this. And it's got to prepare our HDRI light, so that's what we're waiting for right now. Okay, so render that out. You'll see that all the variation is pretty much the same. I'm going to go in here and turn on color variation and hue shift, and we'll turn this up. And let's just re-render that again. And you can see a little bit out of this. I'm going to need to turn up the hue shift a little more. Let's just cancel that. Let's turn that quite a bit up, and the brightness and saturation, and I'll re-render that. And for some reason, we're having an error. Sorry about this. This comes in development. When we're working with, this is a machine we do develop code on, and yeah. So there is a lot of videos up on our website about the color correction and variation on there. So you can see that in action, and I do apologize for it not working in this demo. We're going to walk through the rest of the stuff real quick here. We do have exclusion splines, so you can simply, and that is pretty much live. So if you animate your exclusion splines over your color variation, or sorry, over your mesh, you can see stuff disappear and appear in an animated fashion. We also have our camera clippings, so that stuff that's outside of the scene is not, or outside of your camera view is not going to render, but there is an expansion on this that you're going to want to use, so stuff that's directly off your screen actually stays there, and you'll be able to get a shadow out of it, but the stuff behind you or whatnot will be away. So that's your expansion value. And our exporting back out to geometry. So I'm going to go, let's just paint up a couple more lily pads out of this so I can actually get a good amount, sorry, and we'll get a good amount of lily pads in here. So anything that I'm going to want to export out of here, I can do it as single objects, everything, or I can pick an object. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to pick lily pad 2, and I'm going to say export out as single objects. And you can see that now they've exported all those lily pads out as an instance of that mesh. So I think we pretty much touched on everything that we had in our new Disperse. I'm just going to jump over the website really quick. I'm going to show you some of the stuff that we have and what to do, where to download it. So if you go to our website and you sign up, when you go to our users dashboard, underneath your users, you can trial any of these softwares here. Just simply press the trial, and it'll add a trial to your, I've already used it, but if you press your trial, add it to your users. When you go to our product download, if you are using 3D Studio Max, there's a certain one for render farms, and there's certain ones for your workstations. You're going to need to use the workstation installer. You're going to want to grab the newest version. And that scene that we were just playing around with, that Disperse scene, is down here. So we have a Corona version of it and a V-Ray version of it. Just simply download the scene, play around with it, let us know what you think. Any sort of questions that you have, go to our support forum. You can simply just go into Disperse or any of our products, show us some of the stuff you've done, show us, give us any questions that you might have, sort of interesting things you might have done with it would be great. Show us some images. Before I go on with this and go any further, I just want to sort of touch on the rest of our products that we have here. We have quite a lot of plugins now in the last 2 years that we've created over time. I'm going to go back from all the way down to Scatter, which is now out in our beta version. So you can simply go in, you don't need to do anything, just log in, download, and for the next 3 months we're having an open beta about Scatter. Forensic, which is our scene checking tool, which is more or less anything that you would check in a 3D Studio Max scene is there. So, and it is free, so go in and sign up, download that. It's all one download, or one installer, so anything that you see here will be installed on your machine, whether you have a license or not. Due to the fact that we don't require a license to render, or really to have in your scene. So if you were to build something in Disperse and send it to a render farm, the render farm wouldn't need licenses to render it. Also, if you were to give it to a client and your client installed our installer, they could have it in their scene and render with it. They just wouldn't be able to create or change any of the settings. It would show up as a no license. We have our proxy, which is our universal proxy. We have Cyclone, which is our parametric modeler along splines, so you can build up sort of anything to complex tunnels, to any sort of parking lots, anything like that, anything that you're distributing objects along splines. And then we have our main plugin, which is our sort of flagship plugin, which is Ignite. And inside of Ignite, we have our main springboard. We have Forensic again, which is our scene checking tool. We have Scribe, which is our spline tool. We have Sculpt, which is our meshing tool. Jumble, which is our random transformation and selection tool. Illumi, which is our HDRI wizard. Unite, which is our relinking and archiving tool, and Amy, which is coming soon, which is our asset management tool. Most of our plugins work with almost all the renderers. Like I said, we're working with Disperse. We've worked with V-Ray to get it more optimized with our renderer. Corona's coming soon, and a lot of the other renderers are just going to take some time to integrate that. So that's about it. Thanks a lot, guys. I'm going to take some questions, and I'm hoping for a lot of questions. If not, we have time to show off some other stuff here, possibly scatter if you want.
Yeah, hi Simon. Thank you so much, and thanks for sharing. The scene. Usually that's what they ask us after webinars, like, "Oh, okay, how can I get the scene?" And thank you for making it available. So you know where to get it. Yeah, great.
All the models are in there as well, so you get everything: the lily pads, the grass, everything to paint up that scene. And we encourage people to just go try it, download the stuff, play around with it, and sort of see how easy it is to paint. And it is sort of difficult if no one knows what to use. So that's why we've decided to do that.
That's brilliant. All right, so we're waiting for your questions now. There's a tab in your control panel, and you can type them in as easy as you're, sending us a quick note.
Well, I can
as easy as yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So don't be shy. This is your chance. And, you know what? I know you showed all the different product. Okay. So what's included in All Access? Really, that's I think a question that comes up a lot.
Yes. Let's jump into that. Sorry, let me just go to our website. Everything in our All Access is every plugin that we make. So our All Access encompasses our main plugin, which has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plugins in it, which is Ignite. Then you get Cyclone, Proxy, Disperse, Forensic, and Scatter. And anything that we make in the future. So we've sort of started off with our All Access plan being a few tools that we had in Ignite, and at that time we had Cyclone and Proxy, and that was it. So we've had quite a few people purchase the All Access. So as we've added more plugins like Disperse and Scatter and the additional plugins for Ignite, we've just kept that as an All Access. So it pretty much covers anything we make.
Thank you, Simon. And what about the pricing? Is it true, right? It's a single license, or is it a subscription? Do you have bulk discounts, for instance, for multiple users?
Yeah, you get. It's like the model that Photoshop uses. It's per person, per license. There is a subscription, but there's no upfront fee. So you don't, it's not like buying other plugins where you pay a certain amount in the beginning and then you have to pay a maintenance fee every year. We are on a monthly basis. So if you want to go and purchase monthly, it's as little as £5 for a single plugin. The All Access is more. You'll get a better discount if you buy yearly. We also give a discount for if you were to buy for 5 users or for 10 users. There's a percentage of discounts.
Yeah, it's less than a coffee a day. It's really, I mean, coffee is expensive in San Francisco, but but it's really a third of a coffee a day. So, and you get it all. And this is the business model that's going on. Everybody, access, really all access to everything in one subscription. We like it.
Yeah. And the subscription thing is something that, there's a lot of people who are angry about the subscription thing. It's going to be something that you're going to notice a lot more software doing. And software's been doing for many years. As much as I have a visual effects background, when I used to use things like thinking particles or fume effects or any of those plugins for 3D Studio Max, you'd buy it, but then every year a new version would come out, and if you wanted that new version, you'd have to buy it again. So that was essentially your maintenance fee. We don't do that upfront thing, but everybody looks at it since Autodesk went to that monthly, and there's been a little bit of a backlash. We sort of keeping that to, we're going to stay as a monthly purchase, but we make it that you can render with it, you can use it in your scenes for free. It's not one of those that you buy 3 floating licenses, and if you have it open somewhere and someone tries to open it up, it tells you there's no license available. We're not trying to do a lock people down to where they need to purchase licenses to use in their studio. So we're trying to make it easily, affordable for people.
Yeah, and you keep adding to it, so it's
it's a lot of different stuff. People purchasing through you guys for a yearly subscription. If you sign up for All Access today, I mean, we did a talk like this about a year ago, and we had almost half the plugins we have now, and it was still the same price. So we keep adding to this and keep maintaining it as well. So we've just done a fresh rewrite for our forensic tool, which goes and cleans up a lot more things in your scene. So yeah, it's as much as it's like an annual or a monthly cost, it's something that we keep writing for, and we keep maintaining, and we keep updating. So there's new releases all the time. Generally, at this point, we have a release almost once a month.
Cool. So give it a try. Give it a try. See how easy it is to paint. You made it look really easy today. If it's as hard, if anybody can do it like you did, I'm sold.
It's easy and it's therapeutic. I mean, it's kind of nice to just sit there and paint in Max, painting your weeds around and erasing them. It's kind of a nice, relaxing thing to do. It's better than, being restricted to a surface and having to paint to, you're scattering on a certain surface, and that's what you're restricted to. This gives you a lot more freedom.
True. Do disperse object, will disperse object be able to be animated?
Yes, you can animate disperse objects. We're working right now on a nice animation offset, which will be, so if you have big crowds of people, you can set all their offsets so they're very different. Right now, it's the animation offset is working in the standard renderers, so Corona and the ones that we haven't done the optimization to. V-Ray, we're working on the animation offset, but at this point it does all take in animated objects, just not the offset for V-Ray at the moment.
Okay, thank you so much, Simon. I don't see any more questions, so if it's okay, I will take the screen back and start bidding goodbye to everyone. Let's see if I can make this transition flawless. And I want to thank everybody that joined us today for spending some time with us. And I want to show you the Novedge product page where you can find all access, as I said, cheaper than a coffee a day, depending on where you live. And I would like also to remind you to follow us on Facebook, Google+, and Twitter. This is our next webinar on V-Ray 3.6 for Rhino. And I'm recording today's webinar, so you can watch it again today on YouTube and Vimeo. And thanks again for joining us. Thank you, Si and the SiNi team. Have a wonderful rest of the night in London, and have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.